It was a typical rainy day at the Healer house. The rain drummed against the roof, keeping Bluey and Bingo from playing outside. Bingo sat drawing in her room while a bored Bluey wandered through the house. Suddenly, she stopped in the middle of the living room. From beneath the old wooden floorboards covered by a rug came a faint scratching sound. Bluey knelt down and listened closely. The sound came again, this time with a soft tapping, as if someone was gently scratching the wood from inside. "Hello," Bluey whispered. In response, a barely audible but distinct whisper echoed back, seemingly from the very depths of the house. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was soft and comforting. Bluey smiled. She had a new friend. She began spending more and more time on the floor, pressing her ear to the boards. Her parents noticed. "What are you playing, Bluey?" Chili would ask, seeing her daughter whisper to an unseen companion. "I'm playing with my friend under the floor," Bluey would happily reply. Bandit and Chili exchanged glances but chalked it up to childish imagination, glad that Bluey had found something to occupy herself. As the days passed, Bluey's behavior grew stranger. She stopped paying attention to Bingo, ignored calls for dinner, at times even refusing her favorite games. Her entire world narrowed to her conversations with the friend under the floor. She'd whisper secrets to it, laugh at its very funny jokes, as she called them, even though Bandit and Chili heard nothing. At night, Chili began hearing strange sounds. Quiet, persistent rustles, creaks, and taps coming from beneath the floor of the children's room. Sometimes she thought she could faintly hear a dry, hushed chuckle that chilled her to the bone. She mentioned it to Bandit, but he assured her it was just an old house or her own tiredness. One day, Bandit found Bluey trying to pull up the edge of the rug in the living room. Her little paws frantically clawed at the edges. "What are you doing, sweetie?" he asked. Bluey turned around. Her eyes, usually full of mischievous sparkle, were cloudy and vacant. "My friend wants to come out and play," she whispered, her smile strangely forced. A chill ran down Bandit's spine. He led Bluey away from the rug. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, Bandit quietly went to the spot where Bluey had spent so much time. He carefully lifted a corner of the rug. Beneath it were old, darkened floorboards, nothing out of the ordinary. But as he leaned closer, he felt an icy draft, smelling of dampness and something putrid. And then he heard it. A quiet, raspy whisper coming from somewhere beneath the house. It wasn't Bluey's voice, and it wasn't comforting. It was filled with malice and hunger. Bandit immediately dropped the rug, his heart pounding. The next morning, Bluey was quiet, almost silent. She wasn't running or jumping. She just sat on the floor, her ear pressed to the boards, humming a faint, unfamiliar tune. When Chili called her for breakfast, Bluey didn't stir. Bandit approached to pick her up, but when he touched her shoulder, Bluey jolted sharply and looked back. Her eyes were completely black, devoid of pupils, and they reflected a grotesque, predatory grin that twisted her snout. "He's very hungry," a voice rasped, utterly unlike Bluey's. Chili screamed. The camera slowly pulls away from Bluey, lying on the floor as she continues to hum monotonously. From beneath the floor, a louder wet scratching grows, punctuated by slurping sounds that echo throughout the Healer house. The sounds grow in intensity, then abruptly cease. The episode begins like any other sunny morning at the Healer house, with Bluey and Bingo joyfully playing in the living room. Suddenly, they stumble upon a large antique mirror that seemingly was never there before. Bandit and Chili are in the kitchen, preoccupied with their own tasks, paying no attention to the children. And this is where things start to go wrong. Bluey and Bingo decide to play making faces in front of this strange mirror. They make silly faces and giggle, but it quickly becomes obvious that their reflections are not just copies. They are different. The reflections in the mirror smile wider than Bluey and Bingo. Their eyes begin to look unnaturally large and bright, almost like someone lurking in the shadows waiting for their moment. You know how a clown's eyes look? Exactly like that. The children at first don't notice anything suspicious, thinking it's part of the game. They try to mimic their reflections, but the reflections start to show something truly chilling. Bandit and Chili appear in the mirror, but their faces are distorted with fear, and their smiles are painted on, empty. They look miserable, almost like lifeless mannequins. Then, the parents' figures in the reflections suddenly vanish, leaving only the empty, sinisterly smiling reflections of the children. Bluey, sensing that something is deeply wrong, tries to touch her reflection, but instead of touching, her reflection sharply pushes her hand away. And you wouldn't believe it, a faint red streak resembling blood appears on the mirror. It was impossible and unnatural. Bluey and Bingo step away from the mirror, but the nightmare is just beginning. Their own faces slowly, almost imperceptibly begin to distort, mirroring the sinister smiles of their reflections. Their voices when they try to speak become deeper, raspier, completely unlike the sweet puppies they are. And then the most unsettling part happens. The background of the room slowly, inexorably begins to transform into a dark, damp sewer. The sounds from the cartoon gradually morph into dripping water, muffled footsteps, and a quiet, sinister giggle that seems to come from everywhere, enveloping the entire space. The final shot, the camera slowly, agonizingly zooms in on the mirror, and in it, there is no longer a reflection of the room. There is a dark, bottomless well, and for a moment, just a second, from that abyss emerges a single, huge, predatory yellow eye. Then the episode abruptly cuts off, the screen filled with a deep, dead black. There's a lost Bluey episode. Whispers call it Not Her Voice. It's one of those episodes you never find listed, only mentioned by those who watched late at night, when they shouldn't have. It started on a normal evening. Bluey and Bingo were getting ready for bed. Their parents tucked them in. Bandit said goodnight. Chili kissed their foreheads. The lights turned off. Soft footsteps faded down the hallway. Bluey lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the night. Then she heard it. Her mother's voice. "Bluey, come here, sweetie." Bluey smiled, half asleep. She slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway. The house was dark, colder than usual. The voice called again, closer now. "Bluey, I'm waiting." Bluey turned the corner toward the living room. But there, standing at the end of the hall, was Chili, smiling, calm, holding a cup of tea. "What are you doing up, honey?" Bluey froze. The voice had come from the opposite direction, still calling her name, software urgent, wrong. Bluey looked back. The hallway behind her stretched longer than it should have. At the far end, the outline of her mother stood, but not quite right. The shoulders too slumped, the neck too stiff, the head tilted in an unnatural way. "Bluey, come here." The real Chili stepped forward. "Sweetheart, come to me, right now." Her voice shook just a little. Bluey didn't hesitate. She ran into Chili's arms. They turned together and hurried back to the bedroom. As Chili closed the door, Bluey heard it again. A slow, scraping sound. Nails dragging along the hallway walls. Scratching. Following. That night, Bluey slept in her parents' bed, sandwiched safely between Bandit and Chili. But long after the house went silent, she kept her eyes open, listening. Just before she drifted into uneasy sleep, she heard a whisper, right against the window pane. "You chose the wrong one." The final frame showed the hallway once more, empty, silent. But if you watched closely and just for a second, the shadows seemed to move, reaching, stretching, waiting. The screen faded to black, no credits, no music, only the soft sound of breathing, too close to the microphone. The room with the clock. The episode begins at the end of the school day. Bluey, Bingo, Coco, Mackenzie, and Snickers are playing in the schoolyard. The air feels strangely quiet, as if all sounds are muffled. No teachers are in sight. Mackenzie suggests a game of hide and seek. The others eagerly agree. He starts counting out loud, monotone, slow. Bluey runs off alone. Inside the school building, she notices an unfamiliar wooden door down a side hallway, similar to other classroom doors but with a dull brass handle. It wasn't there before. The door is open. Bluey enters. The room is empty. Wooden floor, bare walls. In the center stands an old pendulum clock, black, carved from dark wood. The hands move backward. On the walls hang old photographs. In one, Bingo sits on a swing, her face slightly blurred. In another, Chili stands in the kitchen, eyes closed. In the third, Bluey stands at a window, but behind her there's only darkness, as if the window looks into nothing. From the corner, a soft, even ticking sound. The pendulum swings. Bluey sits down on the floor. She hears footsteps beyond the door, but they don't get closer. They only pace back and forth like someone searching but not daring to come in. She steps out. The schoolyard is empty. Coco stands near a tree, staring off. Snickers sits, unmoving. Mackenzie is on a bench. He's watching her. Slowly, he turns his head. He says nothing. Bluey walks up to him. He silently points over her shoulder. She turns. It's the same school door she just came through. In the glass her reflection, but it doesn't mimic her movements. Bluey heads home. The sky darkens quickly. Chili greets her as if nothing happened. Bandit washes dishes. Bingo is drawing. On her paper a clock. No numbers. Everyone speaks normal phrases, but their tone is wrong, rehearsed, uncertain. As if they're unsure what they're supposed to say. Bluey goes to bed. She looks at her bedside table. The same clock sits there. She doesn't remember bringing it home. In the middle of the night she wakes up. From the hallway. Tick, tick, tick. She walks down the corridor. The floor beneath her feet sounds dull, heavy. The lights don't turn on. At the end of the hallway another door. It opens by itself. Inside the same room. But now the clock is taller, almost as big as Bluey. There are more photographs. In one the whole family is at the table but all looking in different directions. The windows behind them are black. In another Mackenzie stands by the school wall. His face is gone. Only a shape remains. Final shot the clock. Its hands still move backward. The pendulum hums louder than before. Everything holds still. Black screen. No credits. No music.